access control up and down as the needs be. So it's a very dynamic-based security policy that can be provisioned very quickly using endpoint analysis.
So what sort of monitoring measures do you have on your security side for the client? Obviously you manage that whole service there.
Yeah, so anything that goes out from the data center or the cloud in this case will be 128-bit SSL encrypted. Yeah. So now that's a given. So that's the trust no one policy. So as much as possible using virtualization, the data and the application never leave the data center. So if it does not get out on the net, then the ability for it to be stolen or misused is vastly reduced. And then depending on the endpoint check and where the user is coming in from and how they're trying to access the data, we can provision the access controls to suit our policy as per whatever the security measures may dictate to. So the technology basically is an endpoint check, and then we go back and look at the security policy and decide what needs to be done, and then it's commissioned accordingly.
So when you're working out a solution for a particular client, obviously we've been talking about endpoint checks before, which is very important to make sure that you're secure at one end as well as with the security package you're in. So in regards to providing that solution, do you do any other type of, the application, enterprise side, the business impact analysis first to understand a bit more about the business before you put in a particular level of type of service?
Yes, we would do. I mean, this changes from customer to customer. And typically we would be engaged with some sort of an SI partner who would work with the customer. Again, from our point of view, we have a product that can be implemented in many ways. The choice in which it is implemented is largely in the hands of the customer. The flexibility in the product is there to adjust for it in whichever fashion the customer will choose.
Just how flexible is that? So I'm the customer there, a certain service provider, security provider, I need to make a change. Obviously it's going to be better on a different level of service that they've taken out with you, but just how readily are your service people available to make sort of changes and more dynamic, or is there a delay period? Say people a fairly high grade secure setup.
We have approximately 230,000 customers around the world, included in which are 99% of Fortune 500. So it is stress tested at industrial scale. And what we believe is anything, again, we help design the architecture, and in the architecture we assume that before anything moves out of the data center, it needs to be completely secure. Now, what is completely secured is dependent on what the security policy says, which is subject to an endpoint check. So it is not an on-off state. I may be who I am. In my office, I have full access control, read, write, print, save, what have you. Outside the network, I will have to, for example, most companies use a two-factor authentication. I have the password and so on and so forth, but that is not enough. And although I may have a 128-bit SSL link back into my data center, I could be compromised on the device, on the location, and many other pieces. And again, the intelligence lies in that endpoint check and the security policy implementation, which then decides, despite me being who I am, and I'm bona fide and authentic, because I'm at a vulnerable endpoint, it will disable me the print rights, the save rights, and so on and so forth. So every time I interact with my data center, in every instance, it is a unique and dynamic delivery path. And that linkage, the security of that linkage really depends where I am in my location. So in the office, it is 100%, I can do what I feel like, I have all the access controls, but perhaps at an internet cafe or at an airport, on a public kiosk, I will be downsized and delimited to only the things. So again, that's the intelligence built in at the server end to allow what leaves the data center and how much the person will have to see, read, write, save,
Well, that's one of those holes that's been around for many years. It has been that dynamic, secure interface there. It's sort of proactive, reactions to always. It's possibly a negative there. So it's an important aspect there to be able to have that security, dynamic in place. So that's a key driver for any business.
Correct. Nothing is 100% secure.
No, that's right.
And what we do is you're exactly right. We take a very proactive stance on it. We assume go out boldly on a no trust basis. You have to earn the trust. given the rights. Again, it's not foolproof, but again, using virtualization, by keeping the data and the applications in the data center, all we're sending out is a 128-bit encrypted link. Again, using virtualization, I don't install the application on the endpoint. So after you're finished, there is no data left on the NPC for it to be stolen and filtered. So as much as possible, we try to cut down, all the security flaws. And we think we do a reasonably good job. But I'm not sure it's 100% true, but it's close.
I think you've got a pretty good reputation out there. I mean, I've used Citrix products in the past, except managing data centers and operations and IT. So, now look, going to round off this with two final questions here. Obviously, we're at Data Center Green Tech in Singapore, this conference. It's a new initiative launched. Being a sponsor to speak here, what do you see this conference offering you as being a platform maybe to engage with other clients? Why do you choose this platform, I suppose?
No, it's a good industry trade event. A lot of our industry partners are here. It's got a good reputation. Certainly most of our customers also attend functions and events such as this. As we do our own Citrix-led events, wherever possible, we like to attend trade events, popular events, such that the customer gets a good choice to listen to various vendors in the market, what they take is, what the architecture is. And for us, we're just happy to be here, proud to be a sponsor. And
I'll see you next time.
Certainly.
Well.
Thank you.
One last question there. Look, just based on your presentation there, if I was a delegate sitting in your presentation, what would you think would be the one key takeaway that I could walk out of this conference with, having listened to you, that I could go back to my business workplace and say, hey, look, I think we can improve our security or the way we do things, make them more efficient?
Security for us is fundamental. It's there built into everything that we do. As a takeaway line, I think what we want to talk about is the proactive dynamic piece that we talked about, and the business of taking data centers as they stand today and turning them into a delivery center where there's a freedom of choice from a user point of view to be able to work with these applications anytime, anywhere without compromise to things like security and cost models, etc. From the data center. So it's the business of taking a data center and turning it into an agile delivery center.
Okay, so I can go and say, okay, I've got a different way of looking at this. I can make my data center work more for the business and to be able to provide what the business is looking for. All right, Mr. Malik, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.